Welcome to the agenda for the regular meeting of Osoyoos Town Council, Tuesday, the 25th of November, 2 p.m. in council chambers. So I will ask that the regular open agenda be approved and there are no late items. Mrs. Robinson, any late items? No, okay, thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Councillor Cheong, Councillor King, all in favor. Yep. And the adoption of some minutes, the regular open minutes from November the 12th and the special open minutes from November the 18th. Councillor Poturica, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. And we will move on to staff reports. And the first one is the appointment to the Destination Osoyoos Board. And I will look to Mrs. Robinson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today in front of you is a council report for appointing a liaison member to the Destination Osoyoos Board. This is normally a 2-year position, as the shift has happened with when the original appointment started on the election year. It was only for 1 year, then we did 2 years, and now we're doing one again. So it's a yearly thing for Destination Osoyoos for one of the council members to sit on the board. And so we're looking for an appointment this year.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion that we recommend one of the councillors to be appointed as a non-voting liaison and an alternate, please? Councillor Bennett.
I would move, excuse me, I would move Zach be appointed again.
And the alternate last year was Councillor Cheong. Are both of you in agreement with that? Thank you. So it's been moved. Councillor King seconding that. Thank you. That's all you need then. I'll call the question. All in favor. Thank you very much. And next is the grant application, Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. Mr. Risling.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is another opportunity for the town of Osoyoos and other municipalities and bands within the region to join forces and collaborate on some grant funding that's available. Again, one of those grants you hope you never have to use from, but we know with the way disasters are occurring on such a regular basis, it's something that is needed. In effect, this is a $30,000 grant that many of us are applying for, that we plan to put together into one pot and allow the RDOS to coordinate all the things that can occur from that grant. It's specifically going towards the ESS group. I think I think council knows who they are, and the public, they are the folks that are on the front line when a disaster occurs. When people are evacuated from their residences, these people kick in and find them accommodations and meals and all kinds of things. So it's a critical piece of work that involves a lot of volunteers. And this grant would go a long way in providing them training and additional support to be able to assist those that are in need when the time arises. So and this is a little bit of a plug. ESS is again a group of volunteers, and if there are any members of the community that want to volunteer for that important service, they're always looking for people to sign up. So at the end of the day, we're looking for support from council to apply for this grant, and then to also provide the RDOS the authority to receive and manage the grant funding on behalf of the town of Osoyoos and the other municipalities and bands that hopefully are successful in this application.
Thank you. I just want to say that the RDOS does a really good job of coordinating ESS services. They have a central location there where they look after this for the entire regional district. It's working very well. There is also the opportunity for a local ESS to take action when it's something that's happening locally. So I certainly support this grant, but I will look to council, please. Councillor King.
I'll move option 1.
Thank you. Councillor Cheong is seconding that. Any other questions or concerns? And then I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. And Mr. Risling, proposed change to scheduling of regular council meetings dates in 2026. And the introduction of consent agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. As council is aware, annually, we have to provide the public with notification of upcoming council meetings. And that's according to the community charter. And this must be advertised for a couple of weeks. So it's also important to note that the schedule that is ultimately approved, that there still can be additional special meetings called. Our past practice has been meetings the second and fourth Tuesday of every month, with a few exceptions. One is if the conferences overlap the meeting dates, that meeting is canceled. A lot of times it's been the UBCM conference that falls on a council day. And we've also shifted to one meeting per month in July and August. One of the things we wanted to propose to council is looking at a change to our frequency of meetings. Some jurisdictions most jurisdictions do 2 meetings per month. However, some are transitioning to once every three weeks. A couple in the region are Oliver and Summerland. In 2025, if we had 20 scheduled meeting days, and if we moved to a 3-week schedule, there'd be 16. So there'd be a few more weeks without meetings, but not a lot. And it's also important again to note that special meetings would still be called on urgent issues and things like budget, etc. So in 2026, we're expecting that the agendas will be a little bit lighter. There's been a lot of work done over the last 3 years, and now there's a lot of things that are going to be done from a working perspective. A few of the things that I guess I just wanted to go through kind of what happens in the administrative office with regards to council meetings. And it's there's a council meeting on a Tuesday. Over the next couple days, the minutes are done, action items, consolidating bylaws. And in the following week, there's preparation of reports, reviewing reports. Hopefully those are done by about the Thursday. And then agendas are put together Thursday/Friday and published usually, well, they are done prior to 2 o'clock on a Friday. And then Tuesday starts and the cycle starts again. So one of the things by moving to a 3-day week meeting does provide some relief to, I guess, some of the senior staff. As we have gotten busier and busier as a municipality, our population increases. There's more and more questions of the public, more and more issues that arise. Our staff are having less opportunity to do some of those special projects. And just for example, this morning, surveillance policy was brought forward, and I can tell you that policy was started in excess of a year ago. It doesn't look like a lot, and it isn't a huge amount, but that just shows you how stretched staff are in order to complete some of these projects that should be ongoing, reviewed, and updated. Most of the bylaws that we've done over the last couple of years have been reactive to try to address issues that are burning or past due. And one of the other things that has occurred over the last couple of years is Town Hall actually had a reduction in kind of that administrative support due to budget pressures in 2024. We have increased now with the communications, our person dedicated to communications, but still there's been a reduction in staff associated with kind of some of that administrative role outside of communications. We've also had a lot of people have been, I guess, carrying the weight of some of those staffing vacancies and the additional workloads out there. There's just what all of our managers and directors are, well, all of them, not almost all of them are putting in additional time that they're not being compensated for. A few in excess of even 60 hours a week on an ongoing basis, not a one-off. There's we don't think there's a ton of impact to the general public of changing the 3-week schedule. In fact, there's probably some things that would be a benefit to the public in that if staff could spend more time on proactively on bylaws and procedures and policies, that might clarify things, which would then reduce maybe frustration to the public and maybe even staff on some issues that they deal with day to day. So I was just giving you an option to consider as far as changing from a 2-week to a 3-week schedule. I do understand that'd be a big change, and it's not something we're demanding, but there is something that would provide some relief administratively to provide that enhanced service and some of the things that we haven't really done for the last couple of years. Another thing that we wanted council to consider is consent agendas. Consent agendas are very common from a governance perspective. And in fact, what this is at the beginning of any meeting, items that are routine in nature or have been discussed at other committees or really almost kind of uneventful from the perspective of all the groundwork has been done previously, those items can be passed in one fell swoop. So in effect, if there's a bunch of items on an agenda that we've discussed, has been through a bunch of issues, you don't have to go through each item one by one as on the agenda. You can actually approve several of these items regardless of where they are in the agenda with one fall swoop, leaving the items that you wish to debate or have further clarification on. So it's a really time efficiency measure that a lot of municipalities and regional districts have moved to. Again, and obviously what it does is it focuses more on the topics that haven't really been seen before or may need some additional clarity or discussion in order to formulate your decision. So there's two options here, or two different ideas and two different concepts that we're asking for council direction on. One is definitely from a legislative perspective, and that's establishing the council agenda schedule. And as indicated, there's a couple options. You can go with the standard one that we've done for the last couple of years, which is meetings every second and fourth Tuesday, with one meeting in July and August. Or you could consider the every 3-week type schedule. Even from that perspective, I mean, we threw out every 3 weeks, it could be changed to a Monday, it could be changed to a starting maybe the first Tuesday or Monday of the calendar year, but wanted to float that out there because we do see some efficiencies from administrative perspective and hopefully maybe alleviate some of those pressures that the public's feeling, plus maybe even reducing future staff increases. And a second piece is probably, I think, a lot less controversial. That's allowing for consent agendas. If that was something council wanted to consider, administration would go back and make the proposed amendments within our council procedure bylaw. Concludes the presentation. And
thank you very much, Mr. Resling. I just have two things to point out. When I first started going to the RDOS, they had consent agendas. I had no idea what it was. So a lot of the advisory meetings, the advisory planning committee meetings are on there. They're usually go through a consent agenda where the chair will say, are you okay with these meetings for the consent agenda? And if everybody agrees to that, then we pass them as one block. Anyone can ask to have something from the consent agenda brought up and added to the agenda. It does and if I chose to ask for one of the items to be moved so there would be discussion, that would be allowed. So it does save some time at the beginning of the meetings. The other, my other concern, and I'll say this right up front, is that the proposed agenda every 3 weeks, when I looked at the days that are on there, I am a member of or a director on the Okanagan Basin Water Board and was the chair of that for 5 years. When we originally had in town, we had meetings the first Monday at the first and third Mondays of the month. It was then agreed that it would be easier to deal with if it went to the Tuesday, the first and third Tuesday of the month. and I was vehemently against that. So, yeah, because I had Okanagan Basin Water Board the first Tuesday of every month. And so that was why we changed these meetings to the second, the Tuesday and the second and the fourth Tuesday of the month. It was originally the first and third Mondays. So that is my concern about it. According to the proposed calendar, I couldn't be at both meetings because the one in March and the one in May would coincide with the same time that I attend Okanagan Basin Water Board meetings. I do think that there could be other options to that, but those are the two things that I just wanted to speak to before I open it up. Anybody who wants to speak, go ahead. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was concerned about, I didn't know what 2 days. So basically, Oliver and Summerland have already been doing this. So I contacted a couple of their council to see what they thought. Here's actually a letter from one of them. I have actually quite liked the change. Sometimes their meetings go a little longer and we'll have an extra meeting stuck in the mix during the day, but generally it works really well. Feedback from staff, if it works really well for them too. They used to go from meetings, follow up nearly immediately into meeting prep when we were on the 2 week cycle. But the 3 week cycle, there's a solid week to a week and a half where it's heads up and getting work done. We used to take off the month of August, which we don't anymore since the change. And if for some reason we miss a meeting, it does seem like an awful long time in between meetings, but that's fairly rare. I would say overall feedback from council staff has been positive. I know that Summerland moved to the 3 week cycle before we did, and they quite liked it too. So that's just a report from a council that's already went through this.
Thank you very much for doing that. Anyone else want to speak to this? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. I think another important note is with consent agendas, you don't need, if I recall correctly, you don't need to have a motion and a second and a vote to remove an item from the consent agenda to move it into the actual agenda. So if there is any, even a modicum of debate or warranted discussion, it's very easy to move it in. Just for additional clarity, can you provide some examples of what a consent agenda may include?
Your worship, depends how far one wants to go, but things like minutes, maybe items that were dealt with at committee of the whole, information items that might come forward. So it's usually those items that have been fairly routine that move forward. And you're exactly right. Even if it's any one individual on council, even if they want to make a statement on something, can do so and remove the item. So a lot of times when I've gone through this process of transitioning from a regular kind of agenda to a consent agenda, is at first people are a little nervous about things, and there's a lot of items exempted or I guess removed from that consent agenda, and then we go through the process of basically going through the entire agenda. But over time, confidence builds and people see that it's an efficiency measure, and it starts working quite well. So does that help?
Committees, and we don't, I mean, we have them included in here and we just accept them usually, or sometimes somebody will talk to them. Age-friendly accessibility, those types of things. Those types of things at the regional district are just accepted unless somebody wants to remove them. And anybody can on any of the items. Yeah. Go ahead.
Quick follow-up as well. This one's more so with the potential shift from once every 2 weeks to once every 3 weeks. So using staff report number 4, so development variance permit application number DVP 25-03 as an example. If that was in it's currently once every 2 weeks, but if this issue came about and we shifted to once every 3 weeks, what would be the time difference between it being presented to council and then being approved? Like, would there be a variance?
Worship, there could be. Maybe in some cases it could be faster, in some cases slower. So sometimes we need Mott has to provide feedback, or other entities need to provide feedback, and depending on their timing and when things come back, it depends on when certain planning reports can come forward. So it really depends when something comes in, whether you can hit that next deadline. So in some cases, it could actually be faster, and sometimes it could actually be slower.
So occasionally we have a 3-week place on the longer months. Occasionally there will be 3 weeks between meetings. And sometimes if we're waiting for something in particular, it can seem like a week longer than necessary. But certainly in July and August, we only have one meeting. So we're kind of used to that. However, that is the time when many people have visitors or go on holidays. So it makes sense to be there. Councillor King, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Just the consent agenda and not the change. Okay, you're seconding that. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? So what, will we deal with that one first, Mrs. Coulson?
Yes.
Because it is a separate one
meaning
anyway.
That we're just voting on them separately.
All right, so that would be the second recommendation on there, and I will call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Anything else concerning the first motion? Go
Yeah.
ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I kind of support what the mayor said. I don't really support going to 3 weeks. If you look at this calendar, we stayed where it is with the changes, you'd have 2 meetings in July where now we have one. August, we have one, which would stay the same. Again, I guess there's a pros and cons. The meetings would definitely be longer. I guess if you had 3 weeks in between, I would think. And 2 weeks, and like you mentioned, there would be some stuff would move faster, some would move slower, but there's no guarantee on either one happening. So I would like to stay where we're at for now.
Anybody else want to comment on that? You can speak.
I think as someone who lives and breathes by the calendar, with a young family, business, and also council and other volunteer positions, I can appreciate allotting one day and just having it loaded with council specific things, and then that opens up the calendar for other things as well. I believe that this would be more attractive for those who may want to run for council, who may be in a similar situation. So in terms of a governance sustainability perspective, with trying to attract more like younger candidates, not that there's anything wrong with more seasoned candidates, I think this could be a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Worship. First off, I'm very appreciative of staff time and the amount of work it does take to put these meetings together. I do like the current staff. I've been in boards in the past where we have gone to a more infrequent scheduling, and I think a lot of the issues that we find that comes up in that is that gap. Of course, the conversation I think earlier with Councillor Bennett brought forward from one of our colleagues at the Valley was, if you are away, you do miss out. And I know even sometimes even in our summer vacancies where we go a month without seeing staffing and ourselves, and I hate to lose that part of it. Yeah, I do like the consistency of having that every 2 weeks. On the scheduling side of things, for me, of course, someone who does work, I do take all my Tuesdays off just so that it's open and available if we have to do something. But appreciate there is a lot of work involved in getting our agenda packages to us, getting the stuff done in between, dealing with the regulatory side of things, making sure that we've got our statutory requirements in place, ready for meetings, and we've got our advertising out in place. And I do like the consistency of that 2-week cycle. I do know, is it the right mix? I do know, for the mayor who also sits on the RDOS, it's opposite weeks for her, and I don't know if that's good or bad for her in terms of planning her weeks. But one week she's with us and the other week she's with the RDOS, but I'm okay with staying in the way it is at this time.
Thank you. Is there a possibility of, if we like, maintaining the schedule we have now until October? And then changing it, or if we leave it the way it is it better to then ask whoever is on the new council to make that decision? Does that make sense?
I think, your worship, because the election's end of October, beginning of November, there's really only 2 or 3 more meetings in that calendar year. And when a new council's elected, that'd be one of their first items of business is setting the calendar for the upcoming year. So I think there's, approving the entire year is probably the way to do it. And that's what you're, I think, supposed to do according to the charter anyway. So I think for thinking about things for 1 month, I don't think is, it's probably not.
So the first meeting for the new council is November the 3rd. So on either one of the proposed calendars.
Yeah.
So my assumption is that at that meeting, one of the items would be to decide what the meetings are for the next year, or not?
It may not. That meeting is, according to the charter, you have to call a meeting with the
Yes.
new council within a week or 2 of the
Mhm.
election. So that's just basically the inaugural meeting,
Yes.
requirement of the
Mhm.
of the charter. So that's a once every 4-year type meeting date.
So we wouldn't want to add the planning the calendar for the next year onto that meeting then?
You have the 24th on both calendars.
Yeah, it could be.
Our corporate officer said we can,
Okay.
but it's
Okay. It's been moved that did you have a question before we go to, okay, go ahead. Mhm.
Thank you. I think it's important to note too, if we do look at the once every 3-week option, we can ad hoc include special open meetings as need be for time sensitive agenda items too, right? So I think we have an opportunity here where we could pilot test the once every 3 weeks. I mean, and then let new council kind of decide if they want to go back to the once every 2 or once every 3. I think with this frees up a lot of time for our staff and allows us to shift away from being reactive to being proactive with a lot of issues, because there is a mountain of them that we need to chip away at.
Okay, now, did somebody make a motion already?
Yeah,
No,
no,
sorry.
no motion.
Okay, go ahead. You had a
Uh,
question?
I don't quite agree with Councillor Cheong. I'd like to stay with where we're at. It doesn't really free up staff time because they got to do the work, whether it's over 3 weeks in between or 2 weeks in between. So I don't really see it saving their time.
But
They have more time to accomplish something, but it doesn't mean they're saving time. They might have more work to get done in 3 weeks. So it's not really saving time.
Is there anybody else, let me just check first. Is there anybody else wants to throw in their 2 bits worth? I'd prefer to keep it the way it is, just so that you understand that. However, Councillor Bennett, can you state
Well,
what you?
I'm kind of torn between the two because I understand Councillor Chung's position. And if I was a businessman, I'd be thinking that way. What I look at is we come in meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of times we're done by 10:30, and then we don't start till 2. What if we just had start in the afternoon, and then those 2 mornings that are there, we're actually, if we leave at 9 or 10, and you gotta go twiddle your fingers somewhere, or Johnny goes to work and then you gotta wait till 2 o'clock to start again. What if we just instead of have 9 o'clock in the morning meetings, start the meetings at 1 in the afternoon and don't have them in the mornings?
Well, that's an option as well, isn't it? The time of day of the meetings. We did, I believe at the beginning of this year, we did agree to having the meetings the way they're set right now. That was the agreement, but I'm assuming it ends at the end of December. Okay. So you could, absolutely, that could be, you could have meetings, all meetings in the afternoon. I know that there are some councils that meet in the afternoon, then they go out for dinner and then they come back for an evening meeting. There's a bunch of different ways of doing it. It's just whatever works best for our council, and the fact that we have to accommodate staff at meetings as well. And our main reason was keeping them like this was to not have to ask staff to come back in the evenings, except when we have special open meetings. I wondered if there were more open meetings, whether somebody who is in business like you, Councillor Cheong, might find that difficult, or is it easier for you to change your schedule to accommodate another meeting if it was needed?
I've done what Councillor Poturica does, where my Tuesdays are freed up, so it allows for special opens, budget, and to me, my Tuesdays are council days. So either it's meeting with other stakeholders in the community or other organizations, I just schedule it all for that. But to kind of follow up on Councillor King's points, I mean, our CEO just presented as to how it would be, like, it would save staff time. And by that, I don't mean that staff would go home early. I mean, that time can be allocated towards other tasks. Because my understanding is preparing for these meetings, there's a front-loaded amount of work. So if you can cut it down, then it actually it saves a whole bunch of time, which can be allocated towards bylaw review or anything like that. So I'm in support of at least maybe pilot testing the once every 3 weeks for a year and see what the benefits may be.
Okay, is there anyone else wants to put in their 2 bits worth? So go ahead, Councillor Pottery.
Thank you, Worship. And no, we kind of talked about this earlier, but considering this is going into an election year, maybe, and I would support that this is the conversation that takes place with the new council, whatever that looks like in November next year. Because the work style, the lifestyle of that council could determine what this looks like. And if there's changes that need to be made, I think that's a good opportunity to have the conversation about changing that and keeping the status quo at this time.
So what I'm hearing is that you are seconding Councillor King's motion? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought you said you agreed to, yeah.
I would support status quo at this time, and that this be a conversation that takes place with the next council, or with the next council post the 2026 municipal election.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. I will now call for the motion on this. All in favor of keeping it at status quo? Against? Well, thank you. That was a 3 against 2. So you can see that there's a lot of a back and forth on this, and there's some very good ideas that certainly have come up. I have to say as well that I go to regular meetings with the regional district, and at this point they are every 2 weeks on the first and third Thursday of every month, and there are also several added meetings when there's budget meetings. So every Thursday this month in November, I have been at regional district. So that's something else that we need to, that will be thrown into the mix, because that will happen next year as well. Okay, thank you. We're now going to move on to the development variance permit application, DVP 2503. Mr. Martin, it says, Colin Martin. So you've changed your appearance today. Go ahead, Mr. Garish, please.
Thank you. I'm pinch hitting for Colin. Let's wait for the PowerPoint. But I will say this is a property the council has seen recently in relation to the minimum frontage requirement. This is similar, whereas you'd previously seen it for the frontage to the road. Now we're looking at the minimum parcel width requirement, which is for the remainder of the parcel. the frontage was under the Local Government Act. This is under your own zoning bylaw. So just a little bit of background context in case you're wondering, haven't we already dealt with this one? So just some basic overview of the property. So yes, the location is 11646 115th Street. It's industrial, OCP and zoning. Parcel size is approximately 4 hectare. It is within the town's growth containment area, so we understand that it's serviced. As you can see from the aerial, it's currently comprised with the gravel processing operation and concrete batching plant. And there is a subdivision proposal, which is what's triggering these discretionary approvals of council. And so, as you may recall from the last time you saw it, it is a 2-parcel subdivision. One parcel is above 2 hectares, the other one's about 1.9 hectares in area. And the zoning bylaw does require a minimum parcel width of not less than 25%. And the applicant for the proposed lot B, and I know it's hard to see, but the proposed lot B is kind of the mustard shaded parcel. Lot A is the blue shaded one. And you can see just from the dimensions of lot B, it's not a typical parcel configuration. And so because of those parcel lines, they are not meeting the 25% parcel width requirement. As you can see, it's a kind of a narrow parcel before it flares out at the back end. So they're asking council for variance to change that from 25% to 14.5%. So regulatory objectives, why do we have a minimum parcel width requirement in the zoning bylaw? And so basically it's to avoid the creation of long, narrow, and irregular shaped parcels. These can create challenges in terms of inefficient land use patterns, especially when you take into consideration possibly easements, topography, setbacks, natural hazards, any other thing that might already limit a parcel. When you have a very narrow parcel, that kind of compounds it. So parcel width requirement is intended to try to avoid that and make sure that there is a usable amount of space on the proposed new property. And again, and I appreciate this was already addressed by council with the parcel frontage exemption, but there also may be challenges with access when you have long, narrow frontages. And if you have multiple of those fronting up against your road network, you're going to have obviously multiple driveways, and there could be slight distance considerations, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why these regulations exist. So in looking at the applications before you today, from staff's perspective, we do recognize that, despite topography, each of the proposed parcels is generally around 2 hectares in area, so it is fairly large. And that land area certainly helps to provide a sufficient space on each of the proposed parcel for development. So even though it's not meeting the width requirements of the bylaw, we don't feel this is going to impinge or adversely affect the ability to develop or to continue to use the parcels. And again, because council's already seen this previously with the frontage exemption request, we're fairly confident that there's no issues with access to the road network with the proposed, I guess, narrowness of Lot B. And just for your benefit, we did refer internally, and we did not receive any comments from fire. And I believe also Public Works didn't have any comments in relation to the proposed width requirements. And again, this is probably familiar to you from the last time you saw this, but again, it just shows the frontage to the existing parcels. And also the top photo shows kind of some of the topography that's existing on site. Conversely, and we recognize there's always an opposite view to this, but yeah, the proposed lot B is somewhat irregular in shape, and we do feel that there are other options available to the applicant that could address this without the need for a variance. First and foremost being just simply redesigning the layout of the subdivision to ensure compliance. But just scrolling back to this image, we do feel that there is sufficient space for the continued use of the site for the aggregate, as well as any other future industrial redevelopment that may occur. So on that basis, there are 2 options before council, very similar here, and I did kind of elaborate on them versus what's in your staff report, but it's either to approve or deny. And the recommendation that staff is making is that the variance permit be approved to allow for the subdivision.
Thank you very much. Questions? Oh, no?
Kind of. Well, not really. I'm just going to move option 1.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for option 1? Is there anyone who would like to speak to this before we ask for the vote? No? So fortunately, the owner is sitting here and he's listening to us. So I will call the question that a development variance permit to facilitate a 2-lot subdivision be approved. All in favor? Thank you very much. That's carried. Okay. We will move on to flood mitigation plan, 2022 implementation. Mr. Garish. Thank you.
So through the mayor, and as council is aware, this was very recently at committee of the whole seeking direction on how to implement some of the recommendations within the town's flood mitigation report that was prepared after the 2017 and 2018 flooding and was finalized in 2022. And as council will recall from committee, that report contained a large number of recommendations, but there were two in particular that related to the town's land use bylaws. So that would be the official community plan, zoning bylaw, and then in support of those bylaws, the land use procedures bylaw. So I'll go over the amendments in a moment, but I'll just start with some quick backgrounds. I know we've all seen this recently. So the town has, as best we can figure, since at least 1980, regulated development within the floodplain associated with the Osoyoos Lake through its zoning bylaw. And the zoning bylaw has, for all those decades, designated the elevation of 280.7 meters geodetic survey of Canada datum as the floodplain for the lake. Now, obviously, this was an issue in 2018 when there was the increased water levels on the lake, and that impacted not only private property, but also public infrastructure, primarily the town's sewer system. And so that was the impetus for the flood mitigation report. And as I indicated a few slides back, there were two specific recommendations in relation to the town's OCP and zoning bylaw. And so the amendments before you today would give effect to some of those. And this just shows, I know they look like historical maps, but they're actually the ones that we still use currently to this day, even though they were prepared, I think, in 1989 or 1990. And you can see where they've established 287 meters as the flood elevation. And I appreciate, because they're black and white and the scale that we're looking at, it's hard to see the floodplain on there, but it is there. And so that's what we use when we try to assess compliance with building permit applications against flood elevation and flood construction levels and whatnot. The new mapping that's being proposed is going to result in a minor increase to that flood level. So it is being proposed to go from 280.7 meters to 280.8 meters, which I understand converted as approximately 4 inches increase in height. We're also being told by True, who is the consulting firm that prepared the report, that this change in elevation is not going to bring any new properties into the floodplain area. It's simply going to affect existing properties. And for existing properties with existing development, they're quote unquote grandfathered. They have existing use rights. So this change in elevation is primarily going to be applied to new development or redevelopment of parcels going forward. In support of this change to the elevation in the lake, we are proposing to update the floodplain management policies within the OCP to reflect not only the new elevation, but also the fact that the flood mitigation report has been done and some of the policy directions contained within it, which I've tried to just cover quickly here in some dot points, but it's also included within the amendment bylaw that's part of your agenda package today. And then in support of this, finally, just providing clarification in the land use procedures bylaw for people who are seeking a potential exemption to these new floodplain regulations, what it is they have to submit to us, and primarily that those requirements will include a professional engineer or geoscientist report confirming that if they can't meet the floodplain, that they're taking other steps or measures or design features to mitigate that, and that the land can be used safely for the intended purposes. And that's actually a statutory requirement. The council has to receive that and consider it when dealing with exemptions. And just for council's benefit and anybody in the gallery who might have been interested, I just thought I'd provide some potential next steps, because I do believe there are some funding deadlines associated with this project. So council, I've said here in the first dot point, is receiving the feedback, which I believe is attached in your agenda. We had the public information meeting a week or so back. I think there was 2 members of the public who attended. First and second reading is today. And then subsequent dates, obviously subject to council direction today, but tentatively scheduling a public hearing for the December 9th meeting, followed by 3rd reading. Ministry of Transportation approval will be required for this one prior to adoption, and then hopefully council consideration of adoption in very early 2026, depending on your meeting schedule. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Were the people that attended the public meeting, we do have some letters included in here, were those brought up at the public meeting, or do you know, or were there specific questions asked that, because I know both of you were there at that meeting? Can you think of anything that was?
Well, so off the top of my head, I know that there's 2 people who attended very early in the meeting, and I do recall that one of them did provide a letter. And we also discussed with him his concerns around the flood elevation. And they generally seem to be in relation to wave action, which I know we talked about with council in the committee report. But interestingly, his concerns around wave action were not quote unquote natural wave action. It was more the wake from heavier boats traversing the lake, and how that wake was undermining, he felt, his not retaining wall, but the riprap or the break on his property with the lake, and that was causing damage that obviously he as the property owner was responsible for and didn't feel that was fair. But from our understanding, regulation of motorcraft on Osoyoos Lake is not a local government authority. I believe that's with the federal government. So we appreciated his concerns, but in relation to wake from boats, there's limited tools or mechanisms that we have to deal with that through floodplain regulations. So.
Thank you. I do know that this lake, of course, has 4 jurisdictions on it: the United States, the town of Osoyoos, Area A, and the OIB. So all of those kind of have to work together. I do know that I'm a director on the International Lake Osoyoos Board of Control, and at our annual meeting this year, there was a gentleman that came and spoke to all of our directors and staff and was concerned about the wake from, not from boats at this point, it was from the very, very heavy wind that we had in the summertime. And it came down the lake, and I'm sure it would have affected quite a few homes, certainly the ones that were facing north, because I think that those were the ones that were hit the hardest. So it definitely has come up, and the International Board of Control has heard the concerns. And when I think there was a letter in here as well about the height of the lake, which is controlled by the Zozel Dam, but not always controlled, because it depends on weather conditions and ice flows and all kinds of things that affect that. However, it certainly has come up, and the Board of Control is also concerned about it. I'm not sure how we could deal with this any better. If you have a lakefront property and you're quite low to the water, then my assumption is that you would then need to take steps anyway. I mean, a flood could fix it, a very strong wind or something. So I'm not sure that it's an easy fix, is it, to deal with that? But I mean, I appreciate the people who have written and said their concerns. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want clarity. This is like for first, second reading, then it would go back for public consultation, right?
Well, subject to direction from council today, if you approve first and second reading and direct us to schedule a public hearing, then we'll notify that and give people a further opportunity to submit comments for your consideration.
Yeah, I make a motion that we give it first and second reading. I mean, it's a bylaw that hasn't been changed in 40 years, so I think it's well worth looking at and getting input.
Thank you. And are you seconding it, Councillor Bennett? Mrs. Coulson, all the recommended motion has several other things that go to, can that all be included in the motion? Oh, it can. So Councillor King, you're aware of that all of the the 5 of them are all included in the motion. Okay. Are there any other questions about the floodplain flood mitigation plan? Yes, go ahead, please.
And we probably talked about this before, but just for further clarity, what was responsible for that change of 0.1?
So through the mayor, I think it's primarily a reflection of just modern, I don't want to say surveying or mapping techniques, but I think the Okanagan Basin Water Board did their main floodplain update or project in 2019 for the whole of the valley bottom, and they used LiDAR mapping tools to, I guess, assess the heights of the lake. And based on that more precise technology, that was one of the main recommendations that came out, is that it's actually 280.8 based on that, I guess, modern surveying technique. So that was the recommendation, to increase it up.
So the OBWB has done a map of where the lake levels are now, certainly at the moment. And they've also done, if the lake level increases by a certain amount, which properties would then be flooded next. So there, it's quite a good one. It's called the flood mapping story. It's on the OBW page on the website, and it's quite interesting if anybody wants to read that, because it gives you quite a bit of detail of all of the lakes up and down the valley. All right, so we've had it moved and seconded that we go for a first and second reading, and all of the other things, including a public hearing on December the 9th. So it's moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Garish and Ms. Duong. Next, we're looking at some the council reports and the mayor's report. Councillor Bennett has been to an community workshop and also an age asset-based community development, 2 days in Penticton. And I was at the Okanagan Interior Invasive Mussel Working Group in Kelowna for 1 day. So could we have somebody move that those reports be paid?
Your worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Poturica, Councillor King, all in favor. Thank you. And I will go back to reports of committees of the whole. So from the committee of the whole meeting of November the 25th, that was this morning, it was moved and seconded that the surveillance policy CORP-013 be approved. So I'm looking for that motion to come forward now. Is there someone who would move that this surveillance Councillor Poturica, Councillor Cheong, you're doing that again? All right, so that would be approved. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris and Shannon. And we'll now move to the CAO report.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, starting off with, I guess, some pretty good news. The seniors volleyball team from Osoyoos Secondary have been qualified for provincial championships. So they requested a community services grant of $500, and that has been awarded to them. That's a standard practice when our local teams make it to a higher level championship. They can request, and there was still money in that fund, so that was granted. Just a couple things going on as far as 1 day cooking programs have been very hugely successful, and they plan to run more in the winter program. So just identifying that. So for people that didn't get into that, it's hopefully going to be more sessions next go round. TGIF, another good turnout November 7th, and there'll be another movie night going on the 28th, and there'll be a double feature. There'll be no movie in December. There's a new accessibility board that's been installed in the hallway of the Sonora Center. The under 13 rec team has a tournament scheduled for November 21st, or had a tournament from November 21st, 23rd. And just mark your calendars. The Snowflake Skate is December 20th, 12 to 4 p.m. New businesses license issued is 13 Finch Crescent. That's a short-term rental. So as council's aware, we now have business licenses for short-term rentals, and we're starting to get inquiries on that. So we're probably going to see a few more over the next few months. Change of business name and ownership. Powerhouse Prince is formerly Happy Paper Parlor. Business license renewals, just want to highlight this. Those went out a couple of weeks ago. We have 66 of about 550 businesses that have already renewed their licenses. And I was just asking people to make sure that they do submit their payment for their business license. They still have another couple of months, but we don't want you to forget. Yeah, from a fire department's perspective, I think this was mentioned a little bit last go around, but a pretty big, huge success for firefighters. They achieved the Superior Tender Shuttle accreditation with FUS, and basically what that is for those within their rural district, there's a requirement to be able to provide so many gallons of water for every so many minutes, and it's a whole test. There's somebody that comes down from the municipality to actually, or our first person actually comes down and does a timing of this exercise, and our volunteers have been working really, really hard on meeting the requirements of shuttling water to various locations, and they did get their star and stamp of approval. So hats off to those folks. I know that was a lot of work, and it will be of benefit to those outside our town limits. They've also met with the Spirit Ridge residents on fire protection, and they also met with the Sunshine Ridge Retirement Home on some fire safety things. So their fire department's been very busy and doing their thing in the community. From an operational services perspective, a new sewer service was installed on Lakeshore Drive. Some not so good news, roof in the operations building, the other part is leaking. You may recall the big part was leaking, and now the office part is leaking, and we got lucky because where the leak was right over our SCADA computer system, and so we got very fortunate that didn't get damaged, or it would have been a lot worse. And a bunch of things with the IHA drinking water. They reviewed our 2024 report, and we're hearing that they're giving it the okay. This is the 2024 report, so that'll be posted on our website soon. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Risling. Could we have a motion to accept the report for information? Thank you, Councillor Bennett, Councillor King, all in favor. Thank you. Now, council reports, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. November 13th, I went to a Silga-based budget financial conference, and along with Director Keith. And basically there was 12 attendees, and they put a lot of the directors that when Director Keith had went through the budget, outlined it to us, put a lot of it into perspective, because a lot of the stuff they talked about, she had already talked to us about. It seems there's a tendency to look at expenses, then try to increase revenues to match those expenses. Other ones were taking revenue balances to versus actual first expenditures, so not capital projects. Some county surplus should be put in reservoir reserves used to pay down debt. And again, capital prioritization framework, it's nice to have versus need to have. So a lot of this you've already heard from her. And basically a lot of it's deferred capital expenditure. So you get a new subdivision, you get a whole bunch of new cost bylaws, you take the money and you spend it right away, and we're not looking at 20 years down the road. So the 5-year capital plans and the budgets basically are very, very important. So a lot of things we're hearing now are very important. So it was a really good review for me. Good. And I think for a new council, I think this fellow is really good to invite him. November 14th, I was at the budget meeting at the Sonora. November 18th, another budget meeting at Town Hall. November 19th, Okanagan Regional Library Board meeting in Kelowna. 19 board members and 7 staff members. Basically, the big thing is equity policy of we have all the many libraries, and how do you allocate their funds, and how do you spend it, make it fair to all the different libraries, because some are bigger. So they do mainly based on population. And then there's some places like right now in Lake Country where they've got 9,000 square foot BC Fruit building, and they're looking at taking that and making it into an active recreation, fine arts library, and splitting the building and making use of that. Then on also we did the budget, another 5-year financial plan. Then November 21st, I had the grant committee meeting. That's my report.
Thank you very much. You've had a busy 2 weeks. Councillor Cheong.
Thank you. A lot of the same things, right? Public input, water, sewer, garbage, special open water, sewer, garbage, grant committee, November 21st. There was also the Chamber of Commerce roundtable event on November 19th. A lot of great conversation with Osoyoos specific businesses that were in attendance. to really determine what our specific needs are, because it is in our strategic priorities under partnerships to work closer with the Chamber of Commerce, South Okanagan Chamber of Commerce, to support our local businesses. And in order to do that, we need to understand what our needs are, what our barriers are, and from there, the chamber can prepare a report to present to council, and then we can make whichever budgetary decisions we decide. So it is important to note that we are constantly seeking advocacy and partnerships with local organizations so that we can enhance the prosperity of our community. And that concludes my work.
Thank you very much. Councillor King and I were also at the same meeting with Councillor Cheong. So three of us certainly have heard it, and it was quite a long meeting. Councillor Cheong actually gave me the wrong time at the beginning. However, I've already had a chat with him about that. And but we were there till 8:30, and there was lots of people that talked about it. So that was good. Okay, Councillor Poturica.
Thank you, Your Worship. My peers, Councillor Bennett, took my schedule for most of the week. So thanks for doing all the heavy work. My week, because 2 weeks have been pretty quiet. I will highlight though that tomorrow, Destination Osoyoos is having their annual general meeting at 3 p.m. at the Spear Ridge. And at that meeting, their stakeholders will be releasing our tourism master plan that council and staff, as well as other agencies and groups in our community, have been working on for the last few years. Recognizing the fact that tourism is vital to our community. It has a tourism spending in our community is about 25,000 per capita. That's all over 7 or 8 times that of our next closest competitor in the interior. So it definitely is a significant part of our economy and plays a significant part of the economy. And this tourism master plan sets us up for the next 10 years in terms of how we continue to enhance on tourism experience in the community. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you're going to hear a lot of the same. Attended the public on the water sewer 2 times. But I think what was important, following up and on Councillor Cheong, the meeting with the chamber was excellent. Everybody kept talking and great input, and we had to leave early because they had to close an hour down. So again, I think it was great that the chamber brought a lot of business to the meeting, and there was a lot of great conversation. And then on last Friday with Councillor Cheong and Councillor Bennett, we reviewed the grant evaluations, and they'll be coming forward more actually at the next council meeting.
Good, thank you. So the grant evaluation's probably in December? Okay. So so I've been at a few meetings over the last couple of weeks. And one was the Okanagan Basin Water Board, which I mentioned was the Okanagan Interior Invasive Mussel Working Group, and that was in Kelowna. And I was there as the mayor and also a member of RDOS. Interesting day that we had talking about James Litley, who's the COO of Okanagan Basin Water Board, gave an Invasive Mussels 101 report, and it's phenomenal. The risks, the impacts, the current status, and had slides to show what happens when we let the little devils into our waterways. So we're doing absolutely everything that we can. And there was probably 100 people there. Lots of Interior Health was there. There was lots of other agencies and a few of us from OBWB as well. Golden mussels are the latest threat. And they are from California, but they're moving. They are easier to deal with in they can grow faster in clear water. So zebra quagga mussels really don't like salt water very much, but golden mussels can sort of grow anywhere. So it's pretty scary. And we were talking about a long full day about mandatory boat inspections in BC, and that has been mandated by the government. But how do we get mandatory inspections when people come in? And it's not just boats, It would be absolutely everything that might be in water. So your hip waders, your fishing equipment, your kayaks, those could all be carrying zebra quagga mussels, and we certainly don't want them here. Then we talked about responsible organizations. Who does the inspection? Does it have to be the conservation officers? Could it be people that work at marinas, that type of thing? And funding models, because of course everything takes money. That was a really good workshop for the day. I was at number 1 last year. This was the second one, and we will continue to do that again. It was put on by Okanagan Basin Water Board and the Okanagan Nation Alliance, so they talked one another. The regional district, we've had some, as I said earlier, we've had 4 meetings this month. Well, another one on Thursday. So some of them are council meetings, some of them are budget meetings. And we did have some people that come and ask for money, so grant and aids. And we had John Summerland, who is from the like BC Okanagan Film Commission, and he's quite a character, and he's lots of fun to listen to. And Gord, remember Gord Wiley that was here when they did yes, up in the hills. And so I said to him, I thought you promised us that we were getting number 2 this in the series. And he said, well, not yet, but we might be getting it. They're actually asking the regional district for money, which we give every year, but they want a little bit more, of course. Who doesn't? Inflatable sound stages. And apparently this is something that you can set up anywhere, and it actually muffles the sound. So, I mean, you could put it in the middle of it, if they had a band or something like that inside, somehow it manages to keep the sound inside. So they're looking at perhaps having one of those, but there are tons of movies being made up and down the valley, as we know, because several of them have been made down here in this end of the valley. And so that's a good thing, because that's keeping lots of people working. I was at the CLT, the Collaborative Leadership Table, that was hosted over in Karamias. That was last Friday. So that is the mayors, chairs, and chiefs up and down the valley, plus over in the Similkameen, that meet 3 or 4 times a year to look at how we can protect the watersheds. And they have sort of a vision of what, and they went around the room and asked us. There were probably 50 people there, maybe 25 of us who are actually on the committee. They asked, what do you hope this valley would look like in 250 years? And that was a pretty big gap, but everybody had a little bit of a different idea. And I said, I hope that our beaches are not covered with shells. That's one thing, because that's a possibility if we get zebra quagga, like Lake Winnipeg has that. And I also said that I thought anytime any of us were doing any economic development, that we should have a water lens attached to it. And actually on Friday this week, I have the ETSI-BC Economic Trust of the Southern Interior. We're going to be looking at a lot of the grants that have been applied for, up to $1 million in the Thompson Okanagan and the Columbia Kootenay. And I specifically asked them the last time, could they have a look when they're doing the judging to see whether water was sort of included, protection of water, conservation of water, watersheds, because I think if we don't have water, we don't have a life here. So really important, but something that I've really been very involved in for sure. I went down the Okanagan Basin Water Board, not the directors, the staff had a retreat in Osoyoos last week, and there was 8 of them for 2 days. So I said, well, I'm coming down to have coffee. And so I did. They were very impressed with everything in Osoyoos, the cleanliness, the friendliness, all of the places that they went to visit. They were staying at Watermark and they had a lovely villa where they had their meetings, which was right on the beach. So they thought it was great and they thanked Osoyoos for the great time that they had here. And certainly I mentioned we were at the chamber meeting. So I just wanted to add that I noticed that Route 40 bus on Fridays from November the 28th to December the 19th will have an added bus run. It leaves Osoyoos at 8:29 a.m. at Main and 89th across the street, and it returns back from Penticton at 2:32 p.m. So that's not only for people to go up and do shopping or medical appointments or meeting people for lunch or whatever they needed to do. So that was a good thing. And I think that is everything that I had on there. So I will ask to have the meeting now move into in camera, and that pursuant to section 91 of the community charter, a part of the council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to one or more of the following. 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another person appointed by the municipality. 91C, labor relations or other employee matters. 91J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection and Privacy Act, Act 21(1)(a)(2). So could I have a motion, please, to go into in camera? Thank you. Councillor Cheong, Councillor King, bye-bye. All in favor. Thank you.